Hey, what's up everybody? This is Streamline Carry back with another knife review video for you today. Today I have quite a special treat. This is a knife that has only been on the market for about a week as of early April 2011, and it is none other than the Spyderco Navaja designed by Ed Schempp. This is the latest in Spyderco's ethnic line collection, and it is quite a beautiful knife, as we'll see when we go into the details further on in the review. But here you can see Ed Schempp's logo right there on the up toward the spine of the blade. And this knife is about 5 ounces. It is quite hefty, but the blade length that you get for that is over 4 inches. And some of you may have picked up already on that kind of strange noise that this knife makes when you open it. And you can kind of hear, I don't know how well that's being picked up, but on the opening and closing, there's actually something called a Carraca or Carracas mechanism inside, and I don't think I'm gonna really be able to show it all that well. It's pretty difficult because it's so small, but you can see that sort of toothed disc in there. It looks like a gear, and when you move it, there's actually something inside the knife that it moves against, kind of a little tiny little metal ball bearing almost. And so it makes that kind of, it reminds me of when people as little kids put baseball cards on the spokes of their wheels to just have something that sounds cool as you ride around. Well, this is just basically designed to sound cool while you open it. I really see no practical function at all after looking at the design for a while that you could get out of it, but it does indeed sound pretty cool, and I think it'll appeal to a lot of people. So without further ado, let's go on to the basics of this knife and also kind of where I see it in terms of its application and what you might want to carry it for. It's a larger knife, as I said, just slightly over 5 ounces by my measurement. The Spyderco catalog says 4.75, but that is not correct. It for sure is over 5 ounces. And the basic construction here is that you have stainless steel liners on the inside, and then over top of that you have handle scales, which are carbon fiber. So here are the liners, there's the liner lock, and then over top of that you have these carbon fiber scales, and then up towards the top you have stainless steel bolsters, which are up here at the base of the actual knife near on the pivot. So the construction is actually fairly complex, and I normally favor knives with much simpler constructions. If you actually took this apart, which I haven't done yet and really don't want to do because it is complicated, you would have 2 handle scales, 2 carbon fiber pieces, the 2 internal sections that comprise the liners, then you have 2 stainless steel bolsters, and then you have this stainless steel backspacer as well. And so all that together, that's 7 major pieces plus the blade itself. Then you have a stop pin, and you have a pivot screw, 2 screws here, 1 for each side, 2 screws here, 2 screws here, and then a clip and 3 screws. So taking this sucker apart is a little bit of a daunting challenge, because there's a chance you might not get it back together correctly, especially with that mechanism inside the pivot, which makes the noise, because the little ball bearing that is responsible for that is incredibly small. I can't capture it on camera, it's so small. You have to get one of these and, you know, get a magnifying glass and look at it. So anyway, moving on to some of the more functional stuff away from the basic construction. The knife is CPM S30V in the blade steel. This is actually flat ground. It kind of looks hollow ground from a distance or at an initial glance, but it is in fact flat ground. This latter section of the blade, it's ground all the way from the spine, but then you have this abrupt change in the elevation of the spine, which is one of the things that makes this knife so unique, and it kind of makes it look very aggressive. I would say that this is not a sheeple-friendly knife in any way. Anybody who saw this and, you know, doesn't know anything about knives immediately thinks that this is very aggressive looking. So if you plan on taking it out into public areas and using it, I would think again and probably take a smaller knife as well. But one of the really interesting things and design choices here that Ed made is, if you look at the jimping on the top and the bottom, first of all, that's a little bit odd for him because he generally tries to avoid it. But you also have this enormous choil, which in my estimation is really made for 2 fingers. It's made to catch your pointer and middle finger there, so that you can get this nice controlled pinch grip. Normally, you're only able to get 2 fingers in a pinch grip and 1 in the bottom choil, but here you have 2 along with your thumb. So given the size of this knife, that's actually quite nice, because when you're in this choked up position, you have 2 fingers instead of 1 to give more control, and especially if you had any kind of power cut to make. The blade shape, which is also fairly interesting, is you have a long straight section here, almost a Wharncliffe. If you just cut this off there, it really kind of looks like a Wharncliffe blade. And then you have a very abrupt belly up to a nice sharp tip. So in EDC or general work use roll, you're probably going to get a tremendous amount of wear concentration here in the latter section, because as you can see, if you just put the knife down, then there's a gap there where the heel of the blade doesn't actually contact the surface. So most of your cutting is probably going to be done up towards the tip in a roll fashion. And you know, some people probably have issue with that or whatever. I actually tend to think that the more belly you have, the better. And in a lot of applications, a nice sharp belly like this, where you have a high curvature, is actually very nice. It comes in handy because you're able to develop a lot of pressure in a roll cut like that. Also, I think that this knife would penetrate pretty well. It has a nice, sharp, sturdy tip, and it is tapered in such a way that it would insert itself into a material very smoothly and evenly. The blade stock is pretty thick. I think it's somewhere in the range of the military. That's what I would say, which I think is 4 millimeters. And of course, that changes as you go down because of the distal tapering. You can see that obviously down towards the tip, it gets much thinner because it's tapered. But overall, basically a home run on the blade, and that's really why I bought this knife more than anything else, is that it has such an awesome and unique looking and highly functional, so that firing on all cylinders, has a blade that is just really awesome and cool and functional as well. So then if you move on to the handle and the basic function of the handle and the ergonomics, I talked a little bit about the choil, but this really is kind of the handle, and then as you open it up, the bottom of towards the heel of the blade creates the choil, but this is really the true handle of the knife. And as you can see, it fits my hand extremely well. If you have very large hands, I would say that I have kind of medium large hands, but if you have very large hands, it might be an issue for you. You might be coming out here towards this point, and obviously you don't want to have your pinky on any kind of pressure point like that. So that's no good. But for me, it fits perfectly. And so if you really needed to do any kind of power cut or a reverse cut like this, I talked about that a fair amount in some of my other videos, where actually the reverse cut, the pull cut, is one of the most useful because you get a lot of power, but you also maintain a lot of control by way of the ergonomics of the actual cutting motion. And so I think basically home run on the handle. That's part of why I said that I was surprised he put jimping on the top here, because if you look at some of his other designs like this barong, he has a very purposeful handle design which fits your hand very ergonomically, and because of that he decided to skip on jimping, basically saying that the handle design is sufficient to keep your hand from sliding in any kind of application, including thrusting. So a little bit of a departure maybe from some of his earlier work, but overall I think that he made the right decision, especially since you have this choke up grip, which is so functional. So a couple other basic points. It does have the clip that can be positioned 4 ways. It can be tip up or tip down, left or right. And also, very smartly, the clip is designed so that it covers both of the screws that are holding the scale onto the handle. So there, the 2 screws there you can see, and they have their counterparts on the other side, which are actually underneath the handle. That you're not going to be able to see that, but they're underneath this, or excuse me, not under the handle, underneath the clip. And the lanyard hole, and this is a little bit quirky, but I thought pretty cool. It does not have a lanyard tube, but instead, it's actually drilled through the spacer. And so if you look at the bottom of the blade here, you can see that you will not see the lanyard hole at all in there, down here. You cannot see the lanyard hole whatsoever, and the reason is that the lanyard hole is actually drilled down into this backspacer, and there's still enough metal left to form a wall between the cylinder that comprises the lanyard hole and the backspacer itself. So that means that when you close the blade and you have a lanyard in there, no matter which way you pull the lanyard or whatever, you're never going to get it to rub against the blade, which is a complaint on several other designs, that over time, you know, just kind of nicking the fibers in the lanyard can break it up and cause it to fail. So in summation, I would say that this knife at about $140, I got this at cutleryshop.com, and they are pretty awesome. They have some of the lowest prices around. It was $135 plus I think $8 for shipping, so that's $143. That's a good price. It's difficult to find under $150. So if you see this and you're really interested in it, I would go ahead and pick it up. Last thing I'll talk about actually is the liner lock mechanism itself, which is, of course, just a standard liner lock. You can see it popping out under the tang. But I do have a small issue with this, and this is probably other than the fact that the design is innately complex, this is the only other ding I would give this knife, basically, which is that, as you can see there, Ed cut out just enough of this handle for you to be able to get a tiny amount of purchase on that liner in order to close the knife. And actually, it's difficult to line up, but you can see that most of the overlap is actually kind of up in this area, and this vertical part really, in my opinion, serves no purpose for closing the knife, because when you close it, you're actually going to push sideways. That's what most people want to do. So if I were in charge of this, I would probably have cut out just a tiny bit more here, and then maybe not worried so much about cutting it out here, but a little bit more, maybe a ½ millimeter is all it would take to really allow you to close this much more easily, because as it is now, you really have to push pretty hard. And so for those of us who like to sit around and open and close our knives all the time, especially one as cool as this that has that baseball cards in the spoke action, the Carraca mechanism, it is a little bit of a hindrance. Obviously not a huge deal. I found myself closing it this way with my index finger depressing it, because over time it does really kind of make your thumb raw if you do it long enough. Anyway, this is kind of the first look at this knife because I haven't had it all that long. I may in the future do an update on it after I've carried it for a fair amount of time, and let you know how it performs and what I think of it. What are my updates on my opinions? But I thought it was cool and wanted to give you guys a first look. I don't know, there may be 1 or 2 other videos, but there don't seem to be a lot of in-depth ones on this knife on YouTube yet. So enjoy, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks again for watching, and if you want to subscribe, please go ahead, and there'll be more videos in the future. Thanks a lot. Take care.